Hi, hello, good morning, happy Monday, and welcome back to the Health and Healing series. For those of you who are new here, welcome. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. My name is Caroline Silberglit and I am a vegan bikini athlete. I am very much deep into my reverse diet. Things are going great, but today I really wanted to focus on kind of how my fitness journey started and things that I wish I knew when I started. That way you can take this knowledge and kind of apply it to your own fitness journey, as I know here in January a lot of you are starting new fitness journeys as well as other things. And maybe you're just trying to take a new direction with your fitness journey. Maybe you'll find something out that you didn't even know when you've been training for years. Some of these tips that I'm going to give you are things that I learned earlier on. Some of these things that I learned maybe like even just a few months ago. So I'm always constantly learning. My fitness journey began in 2017. I was an athlete my whole life. I was a rock climber and a soccer player. I did volleyball for a few years. So I was always doing some kind of sport. Then I got a lot of injuries through soccer and kind of decided it was time to hang up the cleats after multiple concussions and wrist surgeries, and I'm not even going to get into that. So many people are like, why do you have wrist surgeries? Soccer isn't a hand sport. I know. Listen, I'm creative. I find ways to get hurt apparently. So time to hang up the cleats. I had a 0 period in my high school and I did weights instead of PE and kind of just fell in love with it. I struggled with an eating disorder for a very long time, and by the time I hit college, I was pretty underweight. I decided I was tired of not being able to lift more than 10 pounds with words. I decided that I was tired of not being able to lift more than 10 pounds without being exhausted. And I found ways to make food more purposeful in my life. I found ways to kind of motivate myself, structure a plan around the gym, and I kind of just went. I downloaded an app and just kind of went off of that. My weight definitely went up a little bit out of control actually, and I went into the opposite. And I wouldn't say I was, super overweight, but I was definitely pushing the limit as far as like my body fat was concerned. And I ended up getting really self-conscious, relapsing back into my eating disorder, lost all of the weight that I had gained, including losing a lot of the muscle that I had gained. And it wasn't until bodybuilding that I really found the healthy way for me personally to gain body fat and find love for food. Now I'm like, I love food so much. And like when tomorrow is my birthday and I'm going to have a day where I don't track at all. And I'm super excited. I honestly don't have like a super big want to go crazy and eat all of these things. It's just the idea of being able to eat intuitively, eat mindfully, eat the things that I like and not put it on a food scale is just kind of like a little bit of freedom for me. Long story short, my bodybuilding journey and fitness journey, I would love to do an episode where I get more in depth into that. But bodybuilding really is where I got serious and started putting on a ton of muscle, and I'm still doing that and I'm still learning new things every day. So that's just a quick little how my fitness journey started, and I'm sure many of you have similar ones. I'm sure a lot of you are either former athletes. I know I have quite a few people who are in the same circle as me of struggling to find a purpose for food and whatnot, and having a negative relationship with food, because it is very intimidating and it can be very scary, especially when you don't have the knowledge behind like how food does help you. So finding, purpose, finding that food is for fuel is really, really helpful. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the tips of things I wish I knew when I first started my fitness journey. So the first couple of tips that I want to give you are all gym related. I have a couple that are like nutrition related as well. So my first tip is just have a plan. So many people go into the gym and they're like, oh, I'm gonna hit whatever is available. So if it's a super busy gym, like, oh, the shoulder press is available, I'm gonna go do that. Oh, the dumbbells are available, I'll go do some lateral raises or some squats holding the dumbbell. While it's perfectly fine to adjust your schedule based on what equipment is available, I found my biggest amount of progress is when I had a certain plan that I was following. This is a plan that gives you KPIs, so key performance indicators. That's going to be like your biggest, strongest lift that you're using to measure your progress. So I hit hip thrusts every single week. And every single week I come back to it, I'm hitting the same rep range. And it's, let's go with my heavy one is 6 to 8 reps. So if I have 2 plates on each side and I hit 7, and then the following week I add 10 pounds on each side and I've hit 6, I'm using that as an indicator of I have gotten stronger. So finding a training program where you can be consistent and you can come back to the same lifts and see yourself slowly progress. And there are many different ways to measure progress as well. But yes, full circle. My first tip is just to have a plan, have a purpose. That way, you're structured and you're able to actually measure your strength progress. My second tip for you is repetition tempo. So one of the biggest things, and this is a more, I would say, recent tip that I learned in the last year or so, is I really enjoy kind of slowing down the negative, holding the isometric, and going through the contraction. That's how I have found is best for me as far as like my hypertrophy goals, so like muscle building, muscle mass goals go when I am exercising. Let's just say a bicep curl. That one, I feel like I always use that as an example because it's just so easy to show, especially like on a camera if I'm not holding anything. So if I'm going to do bicep curls with a dumbbell and I want to focus on my repetition tempo, I'm going to bring the dumbbell up, I'm going to hold it and really squeeze the bicep, and then I'm going to slowly lower it and I'm going to control it. This not only gives you just like consistency throughout the set, but I think it also kind of pulls you away from ego lifting. If you are just constantly going and you're starting to find that you're moving back and whatnot and you're using momentum, are you really using your biceps to lift that dumbbell, or are you using your erector muscles? Are you using momentum? So by focusing on your repetition tempo, you're able to put yourself in check and be like, no, I need a certain amount of weight so that I can control the weight, and I'm actually applying that resistance to the muscle that I'm intending to use. Tip number 3 kind of goes off of like the focus of repetitions, is make your last couple of reps actually count. So a lot of the times I see people getting tired throughout their set, which is totally understandable, right? But then they shy away from the heavier weights. So say I am doing leg extensions. I'm hitting my quads. I'm just gonna pick a random number, 50 pounds on the leg extension, and I'm just going. I got 12, done, great, cool. Your last couple of reps should look like you are struggling, but they shouldn't look like you are using other muscles, and they also shouldn't look super easy. So I will go ahead and put a little clip here as I'm talking of one of my sets so you can kind of see like this is what it should look like. And you use something called the rate of perceived expenditure, so RPE. So in RPE it goes up to 10, and 10 would be fatigue. An RPE 10 is like, I have no more gas in the tank, I can't do another repetition with good form and properly hit the muscle. I typically stick around the RPE 8 or RPE 9. So this is like maybe I have like 1 or 2 more reps in me with good form. So I'm still going pretty heavy and I'm going pretty hard, but I'm not putting myself at risk of injury. With my heavier lifts, let's say like hip thrusts or something that's a little bit more controlled that has less risk for injury, I could go to an RPE 10. My coach kind of decides that for me, so I just go based off of what he tells me to do. But yeah, so knowing the differences between your RPEs so that you can properly assess the weight that you're doing and properly hit your reps. So if you have 12 reps and you're at 50 pounds and you're like, yeah, I probably could have gotten quite a few more in, you know it's time to go up in weight. You don't want to fly through, 12 to 15 and feel like you have way more gas in the tank. Not that that set didn't count, but when I have sets like that, I kind of I'm like, I feel like I really need to just like add a set to this exercise today because that felt more like a warm-up rather than a true set where I am applying damage to the muscle so that I can grow it. Tip number 4 is going to be rest times. This is another super recent tip that I have incorporated into my lifts ever since I started bodybuilding. So back in 2021, my initial coach really put into perspective like why rest times are important. If I am, taking 45 seconds in between each set, I'm going to be much more tired than if I were to take 2 minutes between each set. And this isn't necessarily like a gauge of like, oh, I want to make sure I'm fully like ready to go again. This is more of like, are my muscles like going to be more or less tired? So if I am doing 12 reps and then I wait 45 seconds and then I do 12 reps again, I'm probably not going to be lifting as heavy, but I also will probably be putting a bit more damage on the muscles. So when it comes to rest times, I find especially for hypertrophy, that 45, 60 second rest periods, even maybe as high as a minute and a half, is kind of like the sweet spot specifically for me. When it comes to strength gains, though, and I want to lift heavier and I want to be stronger, I'm going to be pushing my rest times more to 2 minutes. I think it's also important to know like, obviously what are your goals? So hypertrophy, maybe I'm resting a little bit less than if my goals are based on strength, but also what is the exercise? So if it is a single arm or single leg unilateral movement, I'm probably gonna need a little bit less rest because one side of my body, like the opposing muscle, so like if my left versus my right is tired, it's resting while the other one is working, then I do a minute of rest. It's gotten more than a minute of rest because it was also kind of like resting while I was hitting the other side. And then also like compound movements, I am probably gonna need more rest when I am doing, let's say, lunges or a squat or a deadlift than I would need if I was in a machine doing leg extensions or leg curls. So, rest times, it is all very much variable to your goals and what you are doing. For me, typically when it is a compound lift, I'm gonna do more like closer to 2 minutes, maybe even like 2.5 minutes. So once a week I do hip thrusts and I do 6 to 8 reps. So I'm going fairly heavy. That's definitely more of like a strength goal. So I am gonna do like 2 to 2.5 minutes of a rest. And kind of like a bonus tip off of rest times, it is not, 2 minutes is up, now I'm gonna get set up. I am like done with my set, I'm gonna start my timer. I might kind of like walk around a little bit, kind of shake it off. I'm never gonna just like, that's not true, not never. Sometimes I'm just like dead, especially in prep. But very rarely am I just going to sit there in the machine or under the barbell or whatever and be stagnant during my rest time. Walk around a little bit, drink my water, stand, kind of like shuffle a little bit. That way my body is just still moving and it's not getting cold. And then I see my watch says like anywhere between 10 and 15 seconds left. I'm actually going to stop my timer and start to get set up because it takes me about 10 to 15 seconds to get fully set up to start lifting again. So be very intentional about your rest times, especially like if you think about it, if you're not measuring your rest times, it is easy to get sucked in on your phone and you're like, oh my gosh, 5 minutes have gone by, now I'm cold. And also like you might lift quite a bit heavier because you've had a lot more rest time, but your goal isn't necessarily strength, it's hypertrophy, and you're doing bicep curls with the dumbbell. You don't need 5 minutes. Maybe you do. But I'm gonna take a wild guess and say you probably don't need 5 minutes rest between your dumbbell bicep curl sets. Next time you're in the gym, just give it a shot. See what happens when you're super intentional about your rest times. And you'll also notice, like, I used to spend anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours like lifting. When I started becoming extremely intentional about my rest breaks, I honestly very rarely am lifting for more than an hour. And this is, not counting my warm up and cool down and stuff. This is from the time I start my first warm up set of my first exercise to the end of my last set of my last exercise. Typically, I'm lifting anywhere between 50 minutes to like an hour and 10, depending on the day. And I've found that rest time really is what changes that. So tip number 5 is a huge one. It is, do not save your energy for the last set. And I learned this actually mainly by being a personal trainer, because a lot of the times, like, my client would do a set and I was like, that looked way too easy. And they're like, yeah, but there's like 3 sets, or yeah, there's 4 sets though. Okay, and like, why are you saving your energy for when you're the most tired? So if I have 4 sets of an exercise, I'm not gonna do 40 pounds in the first 2 and then decide to go up to 50 for the last 2. If I do like 40 and I realize it was way too easy, I'm most likely going to just add another set or slow down my exercise. What I would prefer for myself personally is, if I am doing an exercise and I have 50 pounds on it and I am struggling for those last 2 or 3, awesome. That's why I use rep ranges. If my rep range is 12 to 15 and I am struggling for the last few on the 14th, then the next set I do after my minute or whatever of a break, and I only hit like 12 or 13, that's awesome. Third set comes around, I'm keeping the same weight and I am struggling and I have only hit 10 and my rep range is 12 to 15. That is what a drop set is for. I am going to stop. I'm going to drop the weight 5 or 10 pounds, and then I'm going to continue to hit 12 to 15, and I'm going to push myself so that my last repetition is still just as difficult. Please remember that it is not about like, oh, I can lift 40 pounds, oh, I can lift 50 pounds, or however many pounds. It is, how much damage are you applying to your muscle, because that's going to be what produces the growth. So if you are hitting 40 and it is too easy for the first 2 sets and then you decide to go up to 50 and that is what gasses you out, you're probably not gonna get as much out of your workout than if you were to go up to 50, hit it again, and then the last set, you're hitting 50, you only get halfway there, drop the weight, and then keep going. So please do not save your energy for the last set. Put it all out there, give it your best shot, and maybe you need a little bit more rest in between sets then. But I see no issue with even doing a set at 50, you're way too tired, do a set at 45, you're way too tired, do a set at 40. Again, this is your workout, but think about your goals and what is going to get you there. Okay, so tip number 6 is learn about your NEAT. NEAT is N-E-A-T, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is all of the energy that you expend when you are not in the gym, sleeping, or eating. So when you are walking to the bathroom, or when you are walking around the grocery store, or when you're vacuuming, sweeping, doing chores, doing the dishes, whatever, anything that is not eating, sleeping, or like intentional exercise. This is actually where I have found a lot of my energy is expended. People think, and this is something that I made the mistake of in college, is, okay, I'm in the gym now, which means I'm lifting heavier, which means I'm expending more energy, and that means I get to eat more. And I saw the scale start to go up, which is great. Part of that is muscle, but I ended up putting on way too much body fat because I was like, I need all of these excess calories because I am in the gym more. I was also giving myself the excuse to be a little lazy because I was like, oh, it was a heavy leg day. I'm just kind of gonna veg out the rest of the day and relax. No. My NEAT, my non-exercise activity thermogenesis went down, and I thought I was lifting heavier, so I was eating more. So the calories that I was expending each day actually went down, and the ones that I was taking in went up. So this is probably the biggest mistake that I have made in my entire fitness journey, is not paying attention to my NEAT and not being aware of how many calories I'm actually expending each day in and out of the gym. I'm gonna be honest with you, and again, this is very dependent on what you're doing in the gym. If you are doing like, plyometrics, CrossFit, like crazy jumps and all of those things, you're probably going to be burning a lot more burning a lot more calories than you are if like you're doing more bodybuilding style, which is like lifting for a certain amount of time, resting, lifting for a certain amount of time. So this is very person and goal dependent. I typically, so says my watch, burn anywhere between like, let's say on an average day, like 300 to 400 calories. Again, so says my watch, in a training session. So the amount of calories that you are burning in the gym is probably a bit less than you think. I do not want anyone to take away from that the gym isn't actually going to be helpful. When you're in the gym, you're building muscle, and that is going to help you utilize your calories more efficiently because you are increasing your metabolism. You are building a better physique that is going to be more efficient. So the gym does lots of great things. Please do not take away from that statement that the gym isn't as helpful as it is, because it absolutely is for so many different reasons, even more so just than like weight loss or mass gaining. Do not think because you started going to the gym that you can smash pizzas every single day and it like cancels it out. So first thing is get something to count your steps each day. I typically hit on an average day probably around 13,000. When I am more intentional, especially when the weather is nicer, I'm actually closer to 16 to 18,000 steps a day. A lot of that is my job. I'm a full-time nanny. I am running around with small children all day. So if you are at like a desk job or working from home, your step count is probably going to be quite a bit lower. I know the recommendation is 10,000 steps a day. So kind of like start wearing something to count your steps and see where you land. And notice if you give yourself the goal to add like 2,000 to 3,000 steps above what you're currently doing each day, see what happens to your weight and see what happens to like kind of like how you look and also how you feel. Sometimes when I'm like super groggy, which is today for sure, just go outside, take a 10-minute walk, 5 minutes one way, 5 minutes back. And I can almost guarantee you that you will probably feel a lot better, but just like mentally getting that fresh air, energized, all the good things. That's what I do when I'm like feeling absolutely dead. Yeah, so increasing your NEAT, taking the steps instead of the escalator or the elevator if you are capable of doing so. Even just like in the gym, I said this before in a different tip, but kind of like walking around a little bit or pacing a little bit around your equipment rather than just standing there. All of those little steps add up. Tip number 7 is all about hydration. So my challenge for each of you, especially if you're not really sure what your liquid / like water intake is just spend 3 to 4 days tracking your water intake. So whether that's in ounces or milliliters or liters or whatever, spend the next couple of days tracking how much water you drink a day. I would love it if we could all try to get in like at least a gallon of water a day. So that is 4 liters. I don't know off the top of my head how many ounces, but 4 liters is a gallon. So trying to get in at least a gallon of water a day and see the difference on how you feel. recently I have not been as good, but typically I have anywhere between 1 to 1.5 gallons, so 4 to 6 liters of water a day. That is where I feel my best. A lot of the times when we think that we are hungry, and before I continue, I want to point out that if you are truly hungry, please eat something. At no point in any type of way do I want to encourage starving yourself. That is such an unhealthy habit. That is a place that I have been intentionally with my eating disorder, and that is not something that I want to promote on this channel whatsoever. This is literally this is my health and healing series. This is all about being healthy and taking care of yourself. And not just physically, mentally as well. So if you are truly hungry, please find a snack, quality foods that have protein and carbs and fats, and take care of yourself. But if you are thinking that you are hungry and you just ate a satiating quality meal, you might just be thirsty. And a lot of the times I have thought this, and I definitely was just thirsty. So drinking water while you are eating your meal, drinking a little bit of water before and after. I always have my giant Stanley cup around with me. So if I'm just watching a show, I'll kind of mindlessly sip on my water. Something else that really helped me is having a straw versus sipping. Especially I love my ice, so I don't want to go for it and then the ice hit my face. So I take a lot smaller sips when I do not have a straw. So getting a straw definitely helped me with my fluid intake. I just noticed that I had more energy and felt a lot better. You're also especially if you're having a lot of sodium, it's important to drink a lot of water to kind of make sure that that is balanced so you're not having too much sodium. If you notice that you have white puffy bags under your eyes, you're feeling sluggish, you're feeling lethargic, and you're feeling inflamed, swollen, it's potential you might have too much sodium and you're not drinking enough water. So give it a shot, track your water for the next few days and kind of see where you land. And if you're not landing in that 4 to 6 liters of water, intentionally try to hit that number for the next 3 days and see how you feel difference. Everyone's recommendation for water intake is different. So always, whenever it comes to following recommendations from other content creators or friends or coaches or whatever, make sure you're consulting a professional to get recommendations for you, because everyone's body is different. I am 5'5" and 120 something pounds. My recommendations and what my body needs is going to be very different from someone who is 6 feet tall and 215 pounds. So just keep that in mind, that everyone is different, everyone's body is different, and these are just recommendations based on my own personal experience, both for myself and the clients that I've had over the years as a personal trainer. Okay, final tip number 8, which is just based on nutrition, general macronutrients. Find out what carbs, fats, and proteins are going to do for you. And not that I think everyone should track and use a food scale, but again, spend 2 to 3 days using a food scale or some type of measurement, even if it is teaspoon versus tablespoon, just to see what a proper serving size looks like for each macronutrient. Now, this is a very broad topic that I could honestly spend an entire hour educating and talking about, but I'm just going to give kind of a brief overview. So carbohydrates are kind of what we're using when we are just go. It's our main source of fuel in the gym. It is what helps us lift things and just do things and function in general. Fats are more brain health and getting through the day. If you are doing more endurance, long duration, low intensity type things. And then protein is what is going to help us build that muscle, amino acids. It's the building blocks of our muscle and whatnot. Protein is also very satiating. So when you are trying to lose weight, making sure that we are focusing on that protein intake being a little bit higher. That'll help kind of curb those cravings, not curb necessarily your hunger, but curb the cravings so you're not like constantly thinking about food. My biggest thing that I have been on a protein hot chocolate kick because it is winter and I love hot chocolate. I have literally just been doing like hot water and protein powder, like chocolate protein powder, and it is honestly better than any of the hot chocolate I have ever had. So that was like a tip within a tip, a little winter bonus tip. But yeah, so just knowing what each macronutrient does. And my other tip is like for knowing your serving sizes, I think at this point I'm pretty good at eyeballing. Like if I need 50 grams of a banana, I literally have 50 grams of banana with my pre-workout pretty much every single day. So I kind of know what that looks like now. But if I were to say to you like, oh, you need 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, this is probably the most common one that people misjudge, and it is also one that I misjudged for a long time. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is 32 grams of peanut butter, and you can grab your tablespoon, or I actually have a little measuring cup that is 2 tablespoons, and you scoop out the peanut butter. How many times is it overflowing? You're like, oh, it all fits. I'm gonna smush as much as I can in there. And that's 2 tablespoons. And then you do that again, but on your food scale, and it's like 50 grams. That is way more than 2 tablespoons. So just give yourself even like a day or two, just kind of like be mindful of what a actual true serving size looks like, because that was a big game changer for me. In my very first prep, I did a lot of, at the beginning, I did a lot of like measuring cups and measuring spoons. And when I did a lot more on the food scale, it was so much more accurate. And I think that first week that I was super intentional, and this is literally in 7 days, I dropped 3 pounds. I did not feel honestly any different. I still felt super energized. I felt great, but I was so intentional those 7 days with using a food scale rather than just like eyeballing or using my measuring spoons. I ended up dropping really hard and it felt great. I felt great and I feel a lot more knowledgeable now because of it. So yeah, tip number 8 is just, educate yourself more on macronutrients and be more mindful of your serving size. It is very easy to give yourself more than you're tracking, especially when you are also like pairing this with tracking. You're like, oh, well, my FitnessPal says that I get 2,000 calories a day and I'm gonna do this and this and this. Track it all, and you're just like scooping out the peanut butter, scooping out the rice. And in reality, you're actually having 2,200 to 2,400 calories a day. A lot of the times when my clients are like, oh, I'm following the training protocol, I have my water intake, I am sleeping great, and I'm eating like the amounts that I'm supposed to be, they do a week super intentional with like their serving sizes, and that usually is the culprit. So spend a couple days focusing on even just 1 or 2 of these tips, see what changes for you. I always say, like, I can do anything for 7 days. If I just focus for 7 days and it's just like one thing that I'm focusing on changing, I can do that for 7 days. And often I feel much better after trying it for 7 days. And I think you will also just get a lot more knowledge based on being more mindful and intentional on those things. So I hope you enjoyed all of those 8 tips that I wish I knew when I first started my fitness journey. I hope all of you who are starting a new fitness journey are kicking off the new year swimmingly. You have all, popped into the gym or started doing your hiking or yoga or whatever kind of fitness journey you are doing, because not all of it is in the gym, or health and wellness journey or nutrition journey. I hope all of your New Year's are going amazing. If it's not going how we anticipated, rather than just ditching the goal, adjust it to be more realistic for you. And I have contacted the winner of the gift card, so I hope that you enjoy that Raw Nutrition gift card. I can't wait to see what you get and how you use it. If you like it, Again, my discount code is just CARE, C-A-R-E, and that gets you 10% off. It also supports me to continue making this content. Do not forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up for me. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and the next time you see me, I will be 24 years old. Bye, have a good day.